Hey there y'all, it's PK Beats. With Sora announced, we're coming to the end of Smash Ultimate's development life, as the potentially last update ever comes later this month. But that doesn't mean content regarding this game is going to be done. Now, I can't guarantee how much longer this series can go on for, but I'm going to keep it going for as long as I can. You know, while keeping it interesting. So let's just keep going business as usual with today's main prompt by Raighne SSB, asking how the game works regarding daylight savings on stages with in-game clocks. So when I first saw this prompt I was interested, but I wasn't sure how I would tackle it, since daylight savings only happens twice a year, with the next one being November 7th at 2 AM. But if I change my system clock to be November 7th at 1:59 AM and just wait, when a minute passes the hour will go back to 1 AM instead of 2 AM, meaning the shift happened and we went back an hour. So you don't need your console's clock to be connected to the internet or anything, the shift is automatic, which makes this very easy to test. But very quickly before we get into that test, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Raid Shadow Legends. There's a chance you've heard about this once or twice before, but Raid Shadow Legends is a super popular RPG mobile game where you can summon champions, battle with them, and collect gear when you win. You can download it by clicking on the link in the description. If there's one thing that really sticks out about this game to me is its graphics. It's on a whole other league compared to the other mobile games and even some console games, which is something I can really appreciate. But it's not just these graphics, as there's plenty to enjoy in the game itself too. There's tons of mechanics working together to make this a deep, turn-based experience, with plenty of champions to choose from, and tons of goodies you can get when you win a battle that you can mix and match to boost their power. And let's not forget the Arcane Keep dungeon boss named Sir Galaroth, who's actually not a bad guy. He's sort of like a paladin, his job is to guard arcane knowledge, so he's only battling you to see if you're worthy. You're going to need to use buffs to withstand his powerful attacks, but then his minion will remove those buffs whenever it gets a turn, so you've got to be on your toes and strategize accordingly. The game's got a ton of big updates coming very soon, especially those regarding Halloween. So if you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan my QR code, and you'll get an epic hero Chonoru, who is amazing in Doom Tower, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. So have fun with the game, and thank you Raid for sponsoring today's video. Alright, let's get back to the test. So I go into the game a bit before 1:59 and I go to Smashville. And let's pay attention to the clock in the background. As it hits the hour and goes back in time, we can actually see that the hour hand goes back in real time. Testing this even further, if we go to Umbro Clock Tower, also waiting for the time to go back an hour, it does. The hour hand teleports back. And it's also really worth noting that I'm using the in-game camera right now, with the frame-by-frame setting, which is way slower than the usual in-game method of playing, and yet the clock is still keeping up normally. To even further drive this point home, if I keep the game paused, go and change my time again, then go back into the game, and advance a single frame, the clock will change to whatever the new time is, despite the fact that the game itself only advanced a single frame, you know? So yeah, these in-game forms of telling time are absolutely accurate to the console's clock. And of course the same thing happens back in Smashville. When you advance a frame, the clock adjusts to be accurate. Of course, the day setting of the stage itself doesn't change, which is something I've gone over in the channel before. Given this new power of time manipulation, I was a bit curious at what point in the whole selection process the stage's time gets chosen. So from the stage selection screen I have the time at 5 PM, meaning it would be evening. On the character selection screen I have it at 1 PM, meaning it would be day. And just as the character portraits come in right before the match starts, the time is 11 PM, meaning it would be night. And when we get to the match, it is day. So this means the game took the time from the console after the character selection screen, which makes sense. Speaking of Smashville and time though, Oshawater asks if Smashville properly reflects the shop hours found in Animal Crossing. While Smashville was originally a stage based around Animal Crossing Wild World, at this point with additions of things like curved bridges instead of flat ones like in Animal Crossing City Folk, and the clouds looking more similar to those in Animal Crossing New Leaf, it's almost like this stage just represents Animal Crossing in general, which is echoed here, where it describes what game the stage is from. It just says Animal Crossing compared to Town and City saying Animal Crossing City Folk. So I need to keep into consideration times for every game in this series. Now the Town Hall and Museum are open 24/7, so there's not really much to test there. But the Able Sisters shop has an opening time between 7 AM and 10 AM, and a closing time between 9 PM and 2 AM throughout the series. So let's see if any of these times are echoed. I changed my system clock to 7 PM, 2 hours before the earliest possible closing time in the series, and yet when I got into the match, the lights in the Able Sisters building were off. This means they were closed, way ahead of schedule. My guess being that rather than based off a specific time, they just base it off of the 4 phases of the day the stage is on, so as soon as the game becomes night, Able Sisters closes. I was expecting this to be a bit more dynamic, but I guess it makes sense why they did it like this. And as for the opening times, I changed my console to be 6 AM to C, but when I got into the game, all building lights were off, even the 24/7 buildings, which is how the game works, as lights don't get turned on until the evening. But, you know, this makes it hard for us to tell whether or not the store is open. So overall, the Able Sisters store isn't completely accurate to the game, but it's got the right idea, generally. Also, I gotta say, as someone who grew up playing Animal Crossing, I really enjoy the details of the stage. Like how they've got a hybrid setup for flowers here, with a pink one grown. I was thinking about researching the villager houses in the background to see if we could figure out who lives here specifically, but I couldn't really find much information about this, like if certain villagers always have a certain house appearance or whatnot, so any comments regarding that would be very nice. Also, I know I keep glossing over it due to how similar it is to Smashville, but everything I said regarding the clock and daylight savings applies to town and city too. In regards to the building hours though, it is a bit different. At 7 PM or even 10 PM, the lights are on for the Able Sisters shop, as well as Nook's Cranny, but this is because the stage has an early night variant. Starting at 11 PM, we get into the late night time, and the shops are closed, which is more accurate to the normal hours, but this isn't affected by the real-time clock or anything, so yeah. But it's still pretty fun to note. But I think that's enough Animal Crossing, so let's move on. Curve Nasty Jr. on Twitter shows me an interesting video regarding Ridley and Lava. That is, going to the Great Cave Offensive Lava Pit. If you jump onto it as Ridley and use your neutral special, you'll notice that he takes knockback as normal, but he doesn't take any damage. It's probably just some bug regarding the mechanic where hitting Ridley when he's charging his neutral special does a special animation and extra damage, so I guess something happens that causes the knockback but messes up the damage dealt. If you try to do this at over 100% on this stage, Ridley will still get KO'd too, despite, not being able to take damage. I tried it on some other stages like the lava on Norfair and it didn't work there, but if you use it on the lava in Stage Builder, it works just fine. And this time doesn't KO you past 100%. And I found out that the window for this is very generous, happening well after you've used the whole move, which can make for a weird sort of attack. Practical? Maybe not, but interesting. I tried it with a few other things like the Pitfall or the Motion Sensor Bomb, but nothing quite replicated this effect. I assume it has to do with the fact that the lava sort of freezes the character in place for a bit before they get launched, or something like that. Next, AirGod231 gives me a fun fact regarding Pikmin and pummels. Normally, in this scenario with no mashing at 0%, Ness's pummel can only hit 5 times total. However, if you have Olimar throw his Pikmin on Ness first, and then pummel, Ness manages to get 6 total hits instead. If we set Olimar's percent higher, we can see how the speed of the pummel is way faster with the Pikmin on him than without. Now I tried to see just how much faster it would be by doing this setup, but I'm not gonna lie. It's really difficult keeping the mashing like this while staying precise with Olimar's inputs, so I couldn't do it perfectly. But I still did it, and while normally I could only get around 89 pummels like this, with the Pikmin I was able to get up to 94. And it could probably be way higher with better execution, but it's still a good increase. And this isn't exclusive to Ness, of course. It happens with plenty of other characters that I tested, like Lucario here. Now I couldn't get it to work with Kazuya, whose pummels are among the slowest in the game, but I could for characters like Ganondorf, so you'll just have to sort of see what works for your character. I think the exact effectiveness really depends on how soon the Pikmin were placed on you before you start pummels, and if they were placed very soon before, you can get really crazy with it. But overall, this is actually a pretty nice tip to know, since against Olimar, you're probably going to get covered by Pikmin occasionally, so you might be able to squeeze a few more pummels out than normal. Anyway, while we're paying attention to the combo counter, Yeet gives me a fact regarding Palutena's F-Smash and other win boxes. What if I told you that this is actually recorded on the combo counter? Would you believe me? No? How about now? There's a few ways we can demonstrate this. As we know, normally when a combo is recorded on the counter here, it updates all the proper information. If it's not a combo, then just the one move alone gets recorded. And after a few seconds pass, unless another move hits, the counter just goes back to default with all zeros. However, if we use a win box like Palutena's F-Smash after hitting a move, we'll see that the combo counter does in fact change again, but it doesn't restore back to that default state, as the damage here is still recorded. And yet it doesn't have a new hit added to the combo and the total damage is reverted to 0. What this means is that the win box is having some kind of influence on the combo counter. If an opponent is buried, for a while any hits dealt to them will be considered a combo until a few seconds later. But with the win box, while it doesn't happen at the start, a few seconds later the win box will pseudo reset the combo meter. It's kinda unique, but ultimately we can see that the win boxes have some effect. This is the case for all win boxes I tested, like the Gust Jar, Mario's Flood, and even smaller ones like Ness's PSI Magnet, so that's pretty cool. Actually, going back to the topic of berries, SparkJai on Twitter reminded practically everyone of a really basic yet interesting mechanic regarding berries. For the basic test, I used 2 Samuses in honor of Metroid Dread, with 99 stocks, pitfalls on, and each a 100% handicap. I normally throw the pitfall and don't touch the controller at all, in order to create a controlled environment, so here's what I can show you. At equal stocks, the berry time is identical. However, at a 1 stock difference, the person with more stocks will be buried for longer than usual, and the person with less stocks will be buried for shorter than usual. And with a 2 stock difference, this is the same, but it's accentuated even more. And at a 3 stock difference, the bury times are the same as with a 2 stock difference, so the effect maxes out there. Looking at the wiki page, we can confirm the exact frame data and equation used for this whole procedure that gives us this result. So in short, characters who are in the lead will be buried for longer than usual, and characters behind will be buried for a shorter amount of time. It's not too noticeable in game, I feel. I even had to see it myself in Premiere Pro before writing the script to make sure, but it's definitely there. It seems that the frames change more so for the characters behind compared to the characters ahead, meaning it's more of a comeback mechanic than it is a leader killer, if you get what I mean. If we still look at the wiki though, it points out a fact regarding the character's throw berries, which is where this whole berry fact would have its most relevance in the competitive scene. This states that the throw berries have their own equation used instead. So if we use Rob's down throw here on equal stocks, the berry lasts the same amount of time as it does for when there's a 2 stock difference between them. So this whole thing doesn't really affect that much. And out of curiosity, I checked, and apparently the same type of equation gets applied for the sleep effect too. Which I tested with snooze because I'd like to make my life harder than it has to be. And yes, it works like berry, where being ahead in stocks makes you stay asleep for longer than usual, and being below makes you stay asleep for shorter. This is the type of fact that seems really basic, but apparently a ton of people didn't know about before. So seeing how many people were surprised by it, I decided to bring it up here too. And lastly for today's video, Twiggy asks what happens if you view Donkey Kong's Final Smash after inverting your screen's colors. This is a pretty simple prompt, but I thought it'd be funny to go over. But you know how at the start of Donkey Kong's Final Smash, the screen's color get inverted for a bit? Well, if you go into the Switch's settings, you can actually make the Switch as a whole play with inverted colors, which looks just terrifying. I still have no idea what the purpose of this is, but going back, if we activate the Final Smash again, it looks like this. Not exactly back to normal, huh? I'm not sure if it's because the 2 inverted color shades here are different, or if this is just what it looks like to double up the inverted color effect. There's also that one assist trophy, Yuri Kozukata, that causes the effect too, but once again, it doesn't make things go back to normal or anything. It's pretty interesting though. Maybe people more knowledgeable about this type of thing can chime in the comments. I think that'll be it for today's video though. I'd like to thank my beautiful, gorgeous patrons, Skully, Burbo, Hobo, Niklz, Raighne, Sylvi700, BG, Dameplay, Feurolant, Keckothedragon, Nestor Franco, blizwald, DanishToast, Gabrielle, Gaby, Jigs, R2043, RustyRantsYT, sadasda, LOONA, Sylvi, wingedcatgirl, and Yatta Ze. So I've been playing Metroid Dread, which, you know, you should too, to be honest. I'm loving it, obviously, but I can't exactly waste my whole life on it right now because this has ended up being a bit of a busy month for me. But I can't complain, it's nice having the opportunity to work. With Sora being released later this month, I might have to delay the fact video dedicated around him due to certain scheduling issues, but just know I'll try to do that as soon as I can. Now my thoughts on Sora, if you watch my reaction video, you'd know that I'm very neutral on him, and yeah. But I've also just been seeing how much people love that he's in. And also seeing that he actually won the Smash Ballot roster thingy in Smash 4, I'm not going to complain at all about his addition, it makes complete sense. Now I do admit I was kinda hoping he'd bring a lot more cheese with him, kinda like how Hero or Steve did. If only just because that makes my job and content a whole lot more interesting. But you know, you can't win them all, and I know there's a place for a more simple character in the game anyways, right? Anyhow, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, keep up the good work, stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.